Okay, so on Thursday, was it? Thursday. We saw the Rambam and the Tshuva of Ma'aseh Nisim, Rambam ben Rambam, and Jonanthan Abavli, about what qualifies for something to be counted as one mitzvah or to be multiple parts of a single mitzvah. No, that was two sides of the same coin. Multiple parts of one mitzvah or multiple mitzvah. There we go. Now, we noted that the Gemara has a discussion about this, about both the relationship between a single talis string, tzitzit string, and four. Then, when we get to the next parak, which is the next sugya really, by tchilah and lava, and by the tefillin shel yad and the tefillin shel rosh. But what's interesting is that the Gemara provides several very specific nafkamina technically, David, right? Nafkamina. Okay, colloquial is nafkamina. Correct is nafkamina, right? What?
That's what we'll go with.
Good, fine. Right. The reason is, do you know why? Okay, let's do a little bit of grammar here. Nafkamina. Why? What is a nafkamina? Yeah. Why does it? What does it literally mean? Right. That which comes out from this. Right. Or in Hebrew, yotzei mizeh. Right, my yotzei mizeh. What comes out from this? Right, so the plural is not nafka minot. Right, it's nafke mina. Multiple things come out from it. Right, the only way it would be nafka minot, I guess, or something like that, would be if one thing came out from multiple sources. Right, but since you're talking about multiple things which come from one source, it's nafke mina. Okay, good. David is happy for the day. Baruch Hashem.
Hey. Sorry, just ignore me.
Okay.
I was happy for David.
I'm happy for David too. And if we can do a little bit of grammar for him, it's great.
No, this is for everybody, not just for me.
Look, one day he'll go. One day he'll go to YU. He'll be a student of Richard Steiner, and he'll love it. You know, the people who love Professor Steiner love it, and the people who don't don't. Look, he wrote an entire book on the letter Shin, or 2 volumes on Shin or Tzadi, I forget.
Can I read this book? I'm just curious.
If you'd like to, I have never read it, but he wrote about it. He's an excellent scholar. What?
Is there an audiobook?
I don't know. He's an excellent scholar. Certain people like this. Certain people really love studying philology, and if they love it, then he is the man. And if you don't love it, then don't read it. Yeah. Okay. Good. So the stuff I've read of him are indeed excellent. I mean, he is a phenomenally careful scholar.
Knows that much about the letter Shin, and I imagine.
I would hope, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
okay, good. But the Gemara asks, okay, so the Gemara says, what is the difference? What is the difference? Who cares whether you count who cares whether it is 1 or 4 mitzvot? Okay? Now, before we see that, I think we mentioned this, but it's worth pointing out. Why would you assume that all of the tzitzit are one mitzvah? What would lead to that position?
It's possible if you only have 3 or 4.
Rafi?
I was going to say, because the pasuk says, I'm not thinking on the exact quote right now.
Because the pasuk says tzitzit. Yes, thank you. Right? It is. Right? Very good. Right? That is. I think that's pretty obvious. Right? This svara to say that the 4 tzitzit are one. Right? The tchilah and lava is more complicated, and we'll see that when we get to it. Right? But 4 tzitzit versus 1. Right? Yes, it calls it tzitzit. You put the tzitzit on the beged. Right? So you would say this thing called tzitzit are one thing with 4 parts, right? That is the law. And if you, right, just so I have a source who says that, right? If you look just at the end of the sources before we get to the ones we're looking at mostly today, right? He writes the Haktav HaKabbalah. So this is an important point historically. Okay, for a long time, most of the Mefarshim did not bother trying to figure out where the biblical laws came from in the Torah. Right? They just assumed that we had lost the Mesorah, right? That Chazal knew how to derive halacha from the psukim. We don't, and therefore our job is just to understand the Bavli. But then something happened in the 19th century that, as Professor Yaakov Elman wrote, brought about what he called a resurgence of omni-significant interpretation of the Torah.
Hierogeniza.
What?
Hierogeniza.
No.
Damn. Reform movement.
The Reform movement, thank you. That's the other option, right? With the Reform movement was that people, right, there was a sustained movement to challenge the legitimacy of Chazal's interpretation. So therefore, there was a group of scholars who arose and attempted to return to the Chumash and try to figure out and understand the exegesis of Chazal. So he notes that there were several main ones. There was the Netziv, right, from Naftali to Yehuda Berlin, right? There was the Malbim.
None of those were reformed, though.
No, these were response to. Right, they were in the period when Reform was arising, so there were traditional scholars. Yeah. Well, mostly traditional scholars and one non-traditional scholar who also wrote about this. Beno Jacob also wrote about this, right, who was not a traditional scholar, but despite that, he returned to this. Omni-significant is just a fancy academic way of saying the contention that every possible valence in the Torah is true. Right, every implication, every hint, every inference that can be drawn should be drawn. Right, essentially. Right, that model of Chazal. So one was the Netziv, one was the Malbim, one was what we're going to see, the K'tava Kabbalah of Yaakov Mecklenburg. Now there were others, right? The Meshech Chochmah is a bit later. Right, Meshech Chochmah is into the 20th century. The Meshech Chochmah, right, who is Rameir Simcha of Dvinsk, right? The Or Sameach is his other famous work, and that's not his name. He also wrote this. In this way, did I mention everyone? Yeah, I mentioned the four, right? The four main ones he said in the 19th century were those four, right? Netziv, Malbim, Ktava Kabbalah, and Beno Jacob. It is interesting to note, and this is maybe a share for another time, that this seems to have not ended with trying to understand how Chazal interpret Psukim, but in the case of the Netziv at least, in several places, it led to him arguing that you could make new drashot lahalacha from the Psukim that Chazal did not make. Which is a huge machloka whether you're allowed to do that, but Netziv happens to, in several places, do this in his Chuvot Lamaisa.
No, Rishami is the one that's missing, so that would just mean that you can do Kedushin if they, the only thing that they didn't cover at least extensively.
No. Even on things that Chazal meaning even a drasha Chazal didn't make, but in a normal halacha that they could have made the drasha, right? Then the Netziv will sometimes be mechadesh halachot straight from the Psukim, right? And the Meshech Chochmah, not surprisingly, will do the same thing, right? Right now, it's a huge machloka that's okay. What? So Netziv, the Gemara outlines in the Netziv's case, the Gemara outlines that there are two chiyuvim of kibbut avaim. Colloquially speaking, kibbut avaim and yirat, right? Morah, right? He creates a third category called makle aviv imo, which is radical degradation, which can forbid things that should be permitted under the other two categories. Meaning, right, the accepted halacha, okay, this is going on a tangent, but it's interesting anyways, right? The accepted halacha based on Marik and Chuvah Samach Vav, which is nifsak halacha by the Ramah, is that that kibbut avaim extends only to that which is relevant to the parents, and therefore a parent cannot tell a child who to marry, because that's something that belongs to the child's life and not the parent's life, right? That's what the Ramah paskins based on Marik. The Netziv argues that that's only true if the parent just doesn't like the person that they're marrying, right? But if it would cause them objective anguish, or degradation, humiliation, then the parent can insist that the person doesn't marry them, because that's not an isser of kibbud, or a fulfillment of kibbud, it's a isser of makle, right? Which he takes from a different pasuk in the Torah, which Chazal don't quote, right? There's a third time that kibbut avim comes, and that's in the Klolot, in Dvarim, right? And that's where he gets it from, right? So the Netziv is mechadesh this, and Rovadia Yosef has to quite bend over backwards because Rovadia can't just say, we aren't allowed to darshan to psukim. He doesn't like doing that, because he likes quoting important sources, and Netziv is important. So, in order to explain why we don't paskin like the Netziv, he has to actually develop a whole arichos. Yeah, so he actually has a fascinating piece. But that's the reason I bring this up is the Ktava Kabbalah. Now, for those Maimonideans among you, the reason I spend some time with this in my share, as my share knows, is because the Rambam in Hilchos Talmud Torah, in the first parak, says, what is Talmud? So the first thing the Rambam says, what is Talmud? Is understanding the path from Torah Shebechtav to Torah Shebal Peh. How did the Torah Shebal Peh derive the halachot that it did from the written Torah? Meaning, for the Rambam, that is Talmud. Before you get to analysis of those halachot, it's how did we even get there? Right? And therefore, according to the Rambam, that is, when we say you're studying Talmud, that process is critical. So, in that vein, I give you the Ktava Kabbalah. This one, you don't necessarily need sometimes the things that Yaakov Mecklenburg come up with are brilliant, and I could not have seen it coming. This is just simple and obviously true. Rafi was mechaving to it, but to see why, right, to why this became a thing. So the K'tav HaKabbalah writes, he says, "V'arba tzitziot ma'akvin zo et zo she'arbatan mitzvah achat v'her b'tosad yom tov amru b'gemara minal anha." Right, he said the Tosad Yom Tov, and again, this is classic, right? The drasha isn't complicated, but the Tosad Yom Tov is a few hundred years earlier, so he says, I don't know why the Gemara says this, and leaves as a question, right? Because there was, right, this notion of trying to go back was sort of frozen, right? It wasn't like till the 19th century when suddenly systematically, right, like the Malbim, people don't realize, right? The Malbim, for the most part, is a commentary not directly on the Chumash, it's a commentary on Midrash Halacha, right? Because he's trying to understand how did Chazal get to where they did. So he writes, "V'nir li sheyata lehem midamar ritem oto b'lashon yachid." Because when it says tzitzit, what does it say? You shall see it oto singular, right? And therefore it is one. Yoresh arbatan kachat nechshavim. V'yitachen l'chavana zo kol shalosh pamim uzkar parashat tzitzit mechaserim yud batra v'zayur al chadam yachad. So maybe that's why tzitzit is always written as if it were a singular. It's lacking the second yud. That's already speculated. But the simple pshat, the reason, the majority position, the one we follow, is that the 4 tzitzit are one mitzvah is because of to. It's called it, not them, right? Now you'd have to, if you wanted to say it's 4 mitzvahs, you have to say it's it, and it, right? You have to play a little bit of a linguistic game there. Okay, but now let's go back to the Gemara. Now the Gemara says, well, what hangs on this? Who cares? What does it mean that the 4 tzitzit are one mitzvah or not? So let's go back. What are the Gemaras? We read this on Thursday, but what are the Gemaras nafkei mina? Right? What do the Gemaras suggest? What's the difference, David? You think you read the Gemara on Thursday, so what are the differences?
That if you have only 3 instead of the 4,
Yeah.
then do you need to? Are you still mekayim the mitzvah with? Are you?
So that should have been the nafka mina. That's the problem, right? This is the problem. Is if I asked you what is the nafka mina between thinking that the 4 tzitzit are one mitzvah or 4 mitzvah, you would have said, right? Are you mekayim anything? Do you fulfill anything by putting 3 on? Right? What's the problem? Does the Gemara does not say that. Right? The Gemara does not say that is a nafka mina. The Gemara never says, the difference between whether it's 1 or 4, right? 1 or 4 mitzvot is, or the way the post can put it, they put it slightly sharper. Because obviously you have to have 4, right? The way they put it is, what if I only have enough string for 3? Should I bother putting on anything? Right? Isn't that the most obvious nafka mina? Right? That, is it 1 or 4? Well, the nafka mina is, if I have no choice, is it meaningless to put on 3, or is it meaningful to put on 3? Right? That should be the nafka mina, except it's not. What are the Gemara's nafkei mina? One is sadin batzitzit, which is what?
Having a kilayim.
Right. If it is made of kilayim, did one violate kilayim in these tzitzit? Because halachically you're allowed to have wool strings on a linen beged, and you don't violate kilayim. Consider if you are in the process of fulfilling the mitzvah tzitzit, and therefore if it is you have 3 tzitziot on the beged, so if you think it's 4 mitzvot, so then you didn't fulfill the mitzvah tzitzit necessarily, but
No problem.
it's not kilayim, and if you think it's 1 mitzvah, then you did. Right? That was nafka mina 1. What was nafka mina 2?
Walking around on Shabbat.
Good. Was Shabbat. Right? If you go outside on Shabbat with a 4-cornered beged with 3 tzitziot in a place which is a Reshut HaRabim D'Oraisa,
Is it carrying?
right? Is it carrying? Right? Did anyone actually go and check with Yosef? Right? About his family minhag? No, you didn't. Right? I told you can go and check with Yosef, right? That his family minhag, right? The Salvagic family minhag is that they didn't go outside on Shabbos with tzitzit to be choshesh for the position that tchelet makev et halavan, right? And therefore you can't be, right? Or at least, again, I've seen different versions of it from different people in that tradition, right? Whether you only do that when there's no Eruv or even there is, again, that gets complicated because in general, briskers tend to be very machmir on Eruvin, so they often don't rely on Eruvin. So, except where I live in Dagan, is 98% of a Rambam Eruv. I just need to add 2 Tzurah Pesach, and it'll be a Rambam Eruv l'chol hadeot. It already has 4 walls. It's just 2 ptachim. There's like 3 of us who are like, well, it's really good according to almost all Shita, but it'll be good according to all Shita if we put up 2 more Tzurah Pesach. Okay, But that's nafkamina number 2. And what's third? What's the third?
With the cut off corner.
Right. Was the right, was if you cut off the corner, right, now you have 5 corners. Actually, no, that was not enough to me there. Let's just leave that for a moment. Let's start with the first 2. Okay? Let's start with the first 2. Okay, so the question that everyone wants to know is, why were these the nafkamina? Why didn't we just say simply, the nafkamina is, if you only have enough string for 1 or 2 or 3 tzitzit, why don't you just put them on? If you think it's 1 mitzvah, it's meaningless. If you think it's 4 mitzvot, so at least zemashayesh, right? Why didn't the Gemara give that example? Right? Isn't that the simplest answer? Right? So good. You tell me. So start telling me, why would you think that that's not what the Gemara said?
What's the word?
Right, meaning once the Gemara asks, what is the difference between saying that the 4 tzitziot are 4 mitzvot or 1 mitzvah? And the Gemara comes up with these cases. Did you violate shadneis? Are you over on Shabbat? Right? But why didn't the Gemara just say, the question is, are they meaningful in and of themselves or not? Nafkamina. If I only have enough string, nagid, for 1 corner, should I bother putting it on? Right? Or something like that. Come up with something that would be much more directly about, right? Why does the Gemara say the nafkamina is, well, tchelet. So what would you say? Right? Why is that not what the Gemara says? Right? We talked about what determines if something is 1 mitzvah or multiple mitzvah. But why was this what the Gemara thought 1 mitzvah or multiple mitzvah is about? Right? Or to take it differently. Right? This was exactly what the Rambam said by the Arba Minim. The Rambam said, how do I know that the Arba Minim are 1 mitzvah? Because if I don't have one of them, I don't bother taking any. Right? Because it's meaningless. So why don't you just say that? Right? That's the simplest nafkamina. Right? If they are if it's all 4 components of 1 mitzvah, so then if I don't have everything, it's not worth doing. And if it's multiple, right? Right? Why did the Gemara not say the obvious? Right? This is the question everyone wants to deal with. So tell me, what do you think? Right? What would you add? What would you say?
Maybe these 4 different human, but like the same.
Good. So one possibility that Yeshua said is maybe when the Gemara says that according to Rishmal it's 4 mitzvahs, he didn't really mean that. It's a really hard svar to justify. Meaning, it's not really 4, or he didn't really mean that. Meaning, what evidence would you have to say that 4 doesn't quite mean 4? What evidence would you have? I know David doesn't like, but what evidence would you have for something in that direction? There's good evidence. What would you think?
It's a 4 from the
Yes, thank you. The Torah calls it 4. The Gemara says 4, right? Put it on the corners. Right? I mean, everything is about 4s on the corners. I mean, the whole emphasis is on the 4 corners. You put tzitzit, right? There's a good reason to believe that it would be very weird to really say that these are 4 completely separate mitzvot, right? Like, what I understand to say tchilin lavan, you can have a machloket, right? Tefillin shel rosh and tefillin shel yad, you have a machloket. But tzitzis, mapidom, you have what? It's 4 mitzvot. You're going to count it as separate mitzvot. What? Right? Like the front left, the front right, the back left, the back right is 4 mitzvot, and the minyan mitzvot doesn't make any sense, right? The Torah calls it, right? Put tzitzit on the 4 corners of your beged. Right? Mapitom. Right? Meaning, maybe it can't be that Rishmal means what he says at first glance. Right? He means something more nuanced. Right? Or, you want to put it slightly differently. No one would tell you that if you have 4 corners, you don't need to put 4 on. Right? No one would tell you that. Right? No one would tell you that ab initio. Right? What would they tell you? So what happens if you have a beggar that only has, right, and you don't have enough string? What would they tell you?
Don't wear it.
Don't wear it. Thank you. Thank you, Yeshua. Right? Don't wear it. Right? Meaning there's an isser. Right? There's an isser component. Right? Maybe that's the problem. Right?
So, okay.
But let's see what the Rishonim and the Achronim said, because this is really what they're figuring out. I know that right now what this is really doing, that this dion here is really focusing on in a very sort of hyper textual sense, is what exactly does this even mean? Right? Did it really mean, when the Gemara said it's 1 versus 4, did it mean that in the same way it asks about Tefillin Shal Yad and Tefillin Shal Rosh, or Tchila and Lavan, or the Arba Minim, right? Or was there a notion that at some level it's obviously 1, right? They're related at least. It has to be. Right? You read the Pesukim, how can you read it differently? Right? And therefore it has to mean something slightly different with a little bit more nuance. But that's really what the Rishonim and the Achronim are getting at. So I gave you basically 3 answers here. One is the Rashba, which appears in a slightly different form than the Yuchas Rashba, which again, we're not 100% sure who that is. It might be the Rashba, it might be somebody else. It's not clear. It's not the one over there. If you have the blue set of Rashba over there, but it's not that. It's this separately sold book, which also looks blue, but it says Chidushim le'achad meharishonim shenitpesu al shem harashba. Right, that's the technical definition. Right, is the novelties of one of the Rishonim that was printed as if it were the Rashba. Okay, it might have been the Rashba, it might have been a Talmud of the Rashba. Who knows? Right, it's not as bad as the Shita L'Nodul L'mi, where we really have no idea. I remember when I was in Rambam in 9th grade. One of the 11th graders at the time decided that because no one had claimed authorship of the Shita L'Nodul L'mi, by definition, right, that he was the author. Right, that was his thing for the year. Right, that he claimed authorship of the Shita L'Nodul L'mi. And of course, Rabbi Ziskin, Kedar Kodesh, spent the rest of the year, every time he suggested a svara that was against Shita L'Mi, asking steerers on him, so that he, would have to eventually renege on this Narishke. Fine. Okay. Fun things happen in Rambam.
Why? That's true.
What?
Why though?
You have to know the person. He was he was fun. He was fun.
That's like
You have to know the schools.
Yes.
But I feel like if I had to guess which school somebody would say, I'm actually the guy who wrote the Shita L'Nodul L'mi.
It would be totally Rambam. It would totally be Rambam. Totally Rambam.
What did that say?
I should tell Rabbi Friedman the story. I don't know if he knows about it. Okay. Good. Fine. So let us look at the. So I don't. Maybe these are okay. Interesting that the one on Bar Ilan, these are 2 versions that say Miyuchas Lo. But actually, this is the Miyuchas Lo. Okay, these are 2 paragraphs in the Rashba, or the Miyuchas Lo Rashba. So here, what he says. Okay, he says, "My beinayu, mikol makom bein lemar uvein lemar beinan arba tzitziot kidechtev al arba kanfot ksutecha." Says the reason that the nafkamina wasn't simply right. Is there value to put it? Is because the pasuk tells you got to put it on all 4. So that can't be what the Gemara means when it says 1 or 4. It can't be. You have to put it on 4. He says Vikasha. My boy, my ika beinayu. He said, why did the Gemara bother asking? What is the difference? Hachevan depligi Rabbi Yishmael. V'ka'amar da'arba'atam arba'a mitzvot. Since Rabbi Yishmael holds that they are 4 mitzvot, Alma Azi lefaluge atanakama da'amar makvot zo et zo. He said the simple difference is, do you need all 4 in order to be yotzei any? Isn't that that's most straightforward, right? Mipnei she'em mitzvah achat. But the iu l'meimar mipnei she'em arba mitzvot eina makvot zo et zo. And he comes and says, no, you don't need all 4. V'im ein lo arba tzitziot she'aniach shtayim tzitziot o shlosha k'dam reinan gabei tefillin she'tfilah shel yad eina makevet shel rosh mipnei she'em mitzvot. Shtei mitzvot. He said, just say, if I don't have enough string for 4, so put on 3. Well, that's the obvious nafkamina. Good. So what does he answer? This is 4 lines down. Who wants to take the Rashba? Okay, I read you the question which I already said outside. Who wants to read the Rashba? Oh, Rafi is so brave.
Yes,
Rashba. Start from the top.
From 4 lines in. I just summarized. I read through the question quickly, but 4 lines into the Rashba, where he says Venir Ali.
Where?
Right. It's like right 4 lines in on the Rashba. Right. Like. You got it.
I say 2 lines down.
Got it? Veneerly. It's in Rashi Teva.
Dafi, the road.
Dafilu, that one, yeah. No, that's right. Dafilu Rabbi Ishmael.
Kia mitzvah din ein bat talit $6. Parshe, defi ben.
Kedeperish Rashi.
Yes, Rashi makes much more sense. Ben lamar by $6. 4 cents. Kidechki al 4 kanfot kisotecha.
Right, he says, right, exactly what he said. He said, it can't be that Rabbi Shmuel really means this is 4 separate mitzvot, and therefore you can fulfill the obligation by putting on 3. How does he know that's not pshat? Right? Because, right? How does he know that's not pshat?
Dal tzitzit al dal kampot mishmad ileka dal tzitzit lo kiyam mitzvah gedulim klal.
Right? He says, okay, stop there for a second. So what does he say? It must be that Rabbi Shmuel agrees that 4 doesn't really mean 4. And what's his evidence? I know David doesn't like it, but what's the Rashba's contention, right? This is the Rashba, or Milchos the Rashba. It's some Rishon, okay? It's not like, right, why does the Rashba say that must be true? Again, we just said it, because the Torah says 4. Put it on 4, right? No one can come and say, this is not Chel and Lavan, where we can have an argument. This is not Tefillin Shel Tefillin Shel Rosh, right? This is 4 tzitzit, right? Everything in the Psukim point to these being, in some level, an integrated whole. And therefore, this can't quite mean what it means in other places in Shas. And therefore, he says, "Umay dika amar Rabbi Shmuel arba'atan arba mitzvot." Then what did he mean when he said 4? Lo amar hachi legabe denema delo akfu zed. It doesn't mean that he was weighing on the question: do you need all 4 to make them meaningful? Dimkein havi lelememar hachi. Because the next Amud, Laman Chet, teaches you that we have a language for that. It's called Ma'akev Zedzeh or Lo Ma'akev Zedzeh or Ma'akvot. She'ra'atan ha'mitzvot. Ela sover da ma'akve adadi. Obviously he holds that they are. Va'afilu arba mitzvot mikol makom kapid kra dilahavu ahadadei. He said, what is it? And now that we saw the Rambam and Rambam, we can understand what the Rashba is saying. He says, it must be that Rabbi Shmuel holds there are 4 mitzvot, which are ma'akev each other. Now, how does that make sense? What did Rabbi Ben Rambam, you weren't here. What did Rabbi Ben Rambam say? Right? Remember, the Rabbi Ben Rambam was asked by Jonanthan Abavli, and he said, how could it be that the Rambam counts 2 mitzvot of Korban Pesach and Achila, of Shchita to Pesach and Achila to Pesach? How does he count multiple mitzvot if they're ma'akev? Right? If they prevent the fulfillment of each other. If you don't eat it, we paskin. There's a machlokes in the Gemara, but we paskin that you have, and the Rambam paskins like that way. Similarly, that you have to bring Korban Pesach again. So how can the Rambam count as 2 mitzvot? Right? They're ma'akev, aren't they? All right? Aren't they contingent one or the other? What does he say? There's internal contingent, right? There's internally contingent and externally contingent, right? Meaning, you can say that 2 things are contingent because they are part of the same thing, right? So, right, like the Arba Minim was his example, right? The mitzvahs take the Arba Minim. The reason that if you don't have an esrog, you aren't Yotze is because you don't have the Arba Minim. It's just internally, right? But he says you can have external contingency, right? So like we said, if someone says, I missed my train and therefore I didn't make it to work, getting on the train was ma'akev, him getting to work. But no one would say that being on the train is the same as being at work. Right? You can have a procedural thing where one is conceptually distinct from the other thing. They just happen to prevent fulfillment. Right? I won't get to work if I miss my train. That doesn't mean my train is work. I don't get paid for being on the train. Right? If I have a 9 to 5 job, right, I get paid by the hour, so my commute time doesn't count. Right? Then what does it mean that not getting on the train prevents me from getting to work? It means just that. Right? You missed the train. Right? I remember whenever I would try to commute from Sharon. Right? Where like the commuter rail, it's like once every 2 hours. Right? You miss it. Right? You miss the commuter rail to Boston. Like, forget it. Right? Forget it. The next train, this happened to us when we were visiting over the summer. We missed it by 5 minutes, but Baruch Hashem, we had a car. So we just forget it. We'll just drive. Right? But like, not everyone can just drive. Right? And then you get stuck in traffic and, right? But, right, it's not that the train is work. Right? You can have things that prevent the fulfillment of something else because they happen to be connected, but not because they're conceptually the same thing. So what does the Rashba say? He said, look, what Rabbi Shmuel means is the following. He says, yes, so these are contingent on each other. Meaning in order for this to be meaningful, it needs to be 4. That's what the Pasuk says. Right? He says, what does it mean they're different mitzvot? It's not about whether you fulfill. You don't fulfill without 4. Right? But what it means is, it's not meaningless. Right? It's a very fine line, the Rashba is saying. What is Rabbi Shmuel's argument? Is that 3 tzitziot are not sufficient to make you fulfill the mitzvah of tzitzit, right? Because they are externally contingent on each other. I mean, you need to check off all 4 boxes, right? It's like, I think we gave the mashal of a circuit, right? I need to connect the entire circuit or it won't even get off the ground, right? But the question here isn't, are they ma'akev? Obviously they're ma'akev. But they're externally, right? It's like the train going to work, right? Meaning one is contingent on the other. I won't get to work unless I get on that train, right? But, right, if I asked a different question, which was not, I'll put it this way, right? If the question was, did I make it to the train station, or did I make it on the train, right? There's an accident, right, on the train track, Rahman al-Atzlan, right? So I get on the train and I don't make it to work, right? So now I'll say I didn't get to work, right? Getting on the train was necessary to get to work. I got on the train, but I still didn't get to work, right? So I'll say, okay, did I get to work? No, right? In order to get to work, I need to get all the way to Boston, then I need to get to work. But did I get on the train? Is that significant? The answer would be, I mean, it happened. Meaning, it may not be significant for my boss, right? But when I get home and I describe my day, I'll say I was stuck on the train for 3 hours, right? Meaning, it happened. What the Rashba is saying, Rabbi Shmuel is not saying, do I fulfill my obligation without 4? Obviously I don't, I need 4. The question is, does halacha think that without 4, it didn't happen, right? Or something happened, it's not enough, but it happened. It is recognized as at least part of the process, something which is quantifiable, right? And therefore, what does the Gemara pick? The Gemara picks nafkei mina that highlight what? Not, am I yotzei tzitzit, because I'm not, but highlight, was this meaningful or meaningless? Right? And that's the nafkamina. Right? The nafkamina is, if it's completely meaningless, then even though I had strings that are made of wool on a linen beged, which had I put a 4th, would be permitted, because it'd be shemoneh-esrei and tzitzit, which is mutter. Once I have 3, if you think it's 0, so then, this wasn't tzitzit in potential, it was a shemoneh-esrei. Right? But if you think this wasn't, right? Sorry, brain freeze. Right? If you thought it was tzitzit in potential, so then it's not shemoneh-esrei, right? Or to put it differently, right? Let's say it's the difference between a circuit and a building. Okay? If you're 90% done with a building, do you have a building?
No.
No, you don't have a building, right?
Still finished building.
Right? You don't have a finished building, right? Or, I'll put it, fine, different. If I'm in the middle of building an apartment, okay? There are no apartments yet. The outside structure is up, but there's no apartments inside. Is that an apartment building?
No.
Not yet. Is it nothing?
No.
No, and if I wanted to demolish it, it'll take time, right? If I want to build it, there's something there. If I want to build a circuit, right, and I haven't connected it, is there any electric current going through it? No, nothing, right? Because a current needs all, right, the entire to be connected, or 0 happens, right? What he's arguing is that's really what this is. Everyone agrees that it's not a completed product, and therefore it's not meaningful, right? The question, is it like a circuit where until you get 100% nothing happens, or is it something that can be viewed conceptually as building blocks, right, or bricks, right? If it's bricks, I'd say, look, there's something here. Right? It's not nothing. If I want to build an apartment building and I have an empty shell that someone, right, they went bankrupt in the middle, right, I can still sell it for some money because, right, a lot of the infrastructure is built, even if it's not an apartment building, right? But right, is someone going to get electrocuted, right? Is the electric thing going to run with the circuit? The answer is no. It's all or nothing, right? So that's what the Rashba is saying, right? So if you look at his language, he says, look, obviously the ma'akev zed zeh, right? It's not tzitzit without 4. He said, what did he ask? Ka'amar Rabbi Shmuel dehem arba mitzvot lomar dikishem kiyem arba mitzvot. Is that once I got to the end, all 4 components are recognizable. Right? That's what it is. Right? Meaning once I finish it, and think about it, right? Go back to the mashal of the apartment building. Once I finish the apartment, and it's undeniably an apartment building, now can you talk coherently about the exterior, the interior, the elevator? You can. Just because it's now a completed whole doesn't mean that I don't recognize the components of it. Right? I can talk about that coherently. So the Rabbi Shmuel says that's what tzitzit are. There are 4 coherent, right? You can talk coherently about 4 units. Now, without everything, it's not tzitzit. But it's also not nothing. and all Kilayim needs and all Shabbos needs is meaningful, not meaningful. Right? It's a lower standard. Right? So he says, according to the Tanakama, once I have all four, it integrates into one whole. It's like the circuit, right? It's all or nothing. The second you close it, the electricity goes around, that's it. I don't care what's in the middle, right? But everyone's going to agree that they're all necessary to fulfill a mitzvah. That's why the Gemara asks here, what is the difference? And he says, don't give me a lumdish one. Right? You could have been a Graisa Lamdan and just said, the nafkamina is Ba'olam ha'emes. Do you get 4 checks or 1 check? Right? Why didn't you answer that? And what does the Rashba say? Why is that not the nafkamina? Because who cares? Right? The Rashba says, who cares? Right? That's not a nafkamina. Well, how many checks you get in Shamayim does not interest me. Right? That's what he says. He says, who cares? And therefore, instead, what it gave was, Mahani, hi Davi Arbatzidl, Lolaki. He said, but there's a quantifiable difference about Kilayim, which is, do we beat you or not beat you? Right? Do we give you malchus? That is very quantifiable, right? Mishum Kilayim. Even though you weren't fulfilling the mitzvah tzitzit, that's why the Torah called them independent mitzvot. To tell you, don't get malchus. Mishum kilayim, for violating shanes. To hold the chol achat mitzvah b'v'nasmi l'kshiu sham arba hashanami d'lecha el shtayim mikol makam kol chad mitzvah hi v'lo laki. Okay, that is the Rashba. If you look at the next line, there's another formulation in the Rashba. He says slightly differently, only slightly. Is it worth looking at the nuance differences? Okay. It's a slightly clearer and a little bit more succinct, but fundamentally he says the same point. Okay, right, so what do you learn from the Rashba, Yochas Rashba? Right? That what we mean here is not quite 1 versus 4. Right? What we mean is, everyone agrees that it's 1. Right? The question is, are these components that have independent identity? Or is it only meaningful when you have everything, right? Is it the circuit or is it the apartment building, right? Is it something that even once it's a whole, one can talk coherently about the components or not? But the Gemara doesn't really mean 1 versus 4, because if it meant 1 versus 4, it should say the nafkamina is, right, 1 versus 4, right? And again, he could have gotten away. Now, in general, right, the Rishonim don't like nafkaminas don't like that the nafkamina is lamdus. Sometimes they do, but they don't really like that, right? That the nafkamina is just how do you understand it, right? If there isn't, right, they don't like it. It's not always true. The Ron does have that once, right? The old Brisker nafkamina is, the nafkamina is, if I married a woman, I'll deny that the lamdus is like this, right? Would it be chal or not, right? Now, it's true. The Ron in Sanhedrin Daf Tezvav says that in one case, not quite. He says it like if I make a ned there. Okay, right, would it be chal? Or the Meiri has this very strange, right, the Gemara has a question, how many dayanim would you have needed to put a shore, right, put an ox to death had it gone up onto Har Sinai during Matan Torah? Right? And the Rishonim asks, L'may nafkamina? The Meiri says, if I made a ned there, that I will give the number of gold coins to tzedakah, in line with the number of dayanim that would have been needed to kill an ox that went on Har Sinai. Sometimes the Rishonim do say this, fine, sometimes, but usually Rishonim aren't into this, right? They say a nafkamina has to be tachlis. There has to be something there, right? I heard once from Ray Feldman at Ner Yisrael, I think it was Ray Feldman, who said, right, his Purim Chakira was, is a Chakira without a nafkamina not a chakira, or a chakira without a chalos? What's the nafkamina? Maybe there is none. Right? That was you hate that. But that was like his very circular meta chakira. But in general, the Rishonim don't like this. Again, the Ran and the Meiri notwithstanding, in that one place, in that nothing in that sugya is like obvious, right? Like you have to say something. Why the Gemara is trying to figure it out, it's lumdishly beautiful, right? The question is, what is going on there? Is it this actually a death penalty? Is it not? It's very nice. But anyways. Okay, the Grizz also weighs on this. Who's the Grizz? Rabbi Yitzchak Zev Halevi Soloveitchik, also known as the Brisker Rav, right? Right, in the family tree, right? This is Reb Chaim's son, but not the son that was the father of the Rav Soloveitchik from Vayu. That was his brother, Moshe Soloveitchik. Okay, but colloquially the Brisker Rav, and in some yeshiva circles, just the Rav, or is the Brisker Rav, whatever. Most of the people who run Brisk nowadays are from that side of the family, right? Around Yeshua, like the Brisk in Yerushalayim, that's like that side of the family. So the Grizz has Chidush HaMamenachot, and he asked the same question. So what does he say? He says, V'tzarech Iyun. Who wants to take the Grizz?
Should I take it on?
Go ahead, David.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, so just pick up at the end of the line where it says V'tzarech Iyun. Right, he quotes the Gemara first.
Okay.
Right?
V'tzarech Iyun, Demai Tama Lo Ka'amar Nafkamina Hicha De'in Lo Ela Shlosha Tzitziot. So why don't we bring Nafkamina of where he only has 3 tzitziot and not 4? To Rabbi Yishmael de Chashiv Dalad Mitzvot Chaya Likshor V'Larbanan Hare Have Kmo She'ina.
Right, he says the nafkamina should have just been as we said. If I only have enough string for 3, so according to the Tanakama, I should put on 3, and according to Rabbi Yishmael, don't bother. Right, that's the simplest nafkamina. Good. So what does he say?
V'Lechora Mufach Mizeh Kehashitot. Good.
He says, what's the answer? He said, because I can prove from here a halacha, which is good. No, you can't wear the beged. Right? He said the reason the word didn't say that is you're right. Conceptually, it's a possibility, but it's not really a possibility because the answer isn't going to be, just put on as many tzitzit as you can. The answer will be, don't wear the beged. And if that's your only piece of clothing, what's the answer going to be? Round the corner, or go naked, fine. Or round the corner, or stay home, right? The answer is not going to be, right, go outside with a 4-cornered beged with 3 corners. It's not going to be that, right? He's going to make sure, right, that you don't wear it. And if that's the case, imkain.
Would that also be where then, in a case like that, there would be not a practical nafkamina, but a when you could learn things out from without there being a practical case of that happening.
Potentially, right? But he's saying the reason the Gemara didn't say this, right? He's assuming the Gemara isn't going to give you just a lumdish one. It's going to say that if the nafkamina, right, the way he formulates it is the classic nafkamina would be, is it meaningful to have 3 tzitzit? But he said the practical implication of that would be, can I go outside if I don't have enough string with a beged with 3 tzitziot and not 4? And he says that's not a nafkamina, right? Because what you prove from here is that you don't wear the beged. Right, therefore, that can't be the nafkamina. Vimkain
in nafkamina da'afil the Rabbi Yishmael asur halavisha mishum chisron harviyit. So if that's so, then there would be no nafkamina because even according to Rabbi Yishmael, you can't wear the beged because it's missing a 4th tzitziyah. Ve'afil lovesh gimel tzitziyot mikol makom chayav lilbosh dal tzitziyot.
Right, and now what's his logic? But he puts a very sharp spin on it, which is, he notes that you don't really have to say what the Rashba says. Right? Saying you don't really have to say that the question is this one integrated whole or 3 components? Why? Because there's a different reason to explain why that's not a nafkamina, which is, not, is this 3 meaningful components or 1? What's the nafkamina? He says, look, right, did you catch what he did? He a very sharp conceptual move, which is, you can't prove from here that this is all or nothing. Because maybe the reason Rabbi Yishmael says you can't wear the beged is not because, the Tanakama thinks you don't wear the beged is not because it's 1 mitzvah, right? Why might he tell you can't wear the beged without the 4th tzitzit? Because you're chayav to have the 4th tzitzit. Not because the other 3 aren't meaningful, but because the 4th one is still a chiyuv. Right? And he says, therefore there's no nafkamina to saying, right? Oh, maybe is it meaningful to put on 3? Because he said it could be that it is meaningful to have 3. But you still can't wear the beged, right? Not because the first 3 aren't meaningful, but because you're being a mevatel and aseh, you're putting on the 4th. Right? And therefore he said it's tzarech iyun, and then he looked at the Rashba. Right? But what does the Grizz point out? The Grizz says you can't prove from this Gemara. Right? The reason the Gemara didn't simply give the nafkamina, which is, are 3 meaningful, is because there's no way to ever test that. Right? Directly. Right? It could be that Rabbi Shmuel holds that 3 are meaningful. It could be that Tanakh holds 3 are meaningful. Right? You couldn't test it simply by saying, are you allowed to go outside with 3 tzitziot if you only have enough string? Because both Tzadim could say, no, why not? Rabbi Shmuel, because you have a chiyuv to put on the 4th, and the Tanakama because you have 0. But either way, they could say you don't go outside, and therefore that's not a nafkamina. What it had to do was find a nafkamina that is dependent on, are the components meaningful? Saying, am I allowed to go out with 3 is not a nafkamina because the answer for everybody is no. It's only through the negatives that you can test, right, whether there is meaning to the 3 tzitziot. Because everyone will agree you can't go outside. The question of whether you're mevatel and asay of tzitzit is not testable. Right? That's testable in Shamayim. Right? What's testable is whether you give malchus. Right? Or kill him in the case of Shabbos. Right? Put him to death. Right? Right? That would be a very interesting case. Right? I give you hasra'ah that because we paskin like the Tanakama, right, that it's only meaningful if you have 4 tzitziot, and therefore your 3 tzitziot are therefore considered tassels and not tzitzit, and therefore if you go outside you are chayiv misa because of carrying on Shabbos, and then have to say, I understood all that lamdos amanaskin and yoseh. Right? That was the mizbeach I wanted to die on. Right? That particular lamdos.
You can't say. Okay, so given that, even like what you had just said, that we would hold like the Tanakama, right?
Good. If he said, "Well, I'm Rabbi Yishmael," so then presumably, even though we don't paskin like that, he wouldn't be right. It would not be Amanaskin and Yosef, right? We need hasra'ah, right? We need to warn him, and he's
that we're metakin like Tanakama, right?
I'm sort of over exaggerating, but yes, theoretically, that's what you would have to do, right? Correct. You would have to say that because we paskin that all 4 are necessary for it to be meaningful, going outside with meaningless tassels, right, on 3 is an issur of carrying, and therefore you're chayiv misa if you continue doing what you're doing, and he would have to say, I'm an askin ani yoseh. Right?
But if he says that he's like Rabbi Yishmael,
so then we'd say, you're wrong, you can't pass on Rabbi Yishmael, but we wouldn't be able to kill him, presumably. Right? Because he's not saying, I'm an askin ani yoseh. Or he's not saying, I'm doing it with the intent to violate Shabbos, he thinks he's not violating Shabbos. Right? Okay. One more shita. Let's look at this fast. MS. Again, the Griz may conceptually agree with the Rashba, but he sharpens it a bit. Right? He sharpens why the Gemara couldn't ask that. Right? Which is, and this is something that we'll see later in Tzitzit, but it's worth keeping in mind. What the Griz highlights is that there's really 2 things in Tzitzit. One is a chiyuv to put 4 tzitziot on. The other is a corollary isser asay, which is to wear a beged that doesn't have 4 tzitziot. Right? And the Griz says because of that secondary isser, or bittul asay, it's very hard to test. Now there is a nafkamina to this. There is a nafkamina to this. It's not just theoretical. What's the nafkamina? Right? So Tosfos notes in Yavama that there's a nafkamina. What happens if it's Shabbos and my tzitzis get ripped b'rshus harabim? Right? So now there might be a nafkamina. Why? Because, right? What? Right, meaning here, right, the question isn't, can I put it on? The question is, do I have to take it off? Or I have a beged that doesn't have tzitzit, but it's Shabbos, I can't do anything. Is there an isser? Right? So Tosfos suggests maybe there is no isser. Why? Because there's no bittul asay, because you can't have a bittul asay if I have no chiyuv to put it on, because I can't tie it, because it would be kosher. Right? Right? And the connection between this asay and the los asay, or implicit los asay, is actually important la halacha. And the Tosfos is a very long discussion of Yevamos Tatzadi. Okay. Let's just look at these Sfas Emes. The Sfas Emes asked the same question, not shockingly, right? And like the Griz, he says, "Yesh lo chiach mikan to asur min haTorah leicha v'talis below tzitzis afil ba'ones she'en lo tzitzis." Right? He's just even clearer than the Griz. He says what you conclude from here is that what? Even if you have no choice, you have no string, are you allowed to go outside with a beged without tzitzit? No, you just don't wear that beged, or you sew it up, or you go out without a shirt. Mashiyeh, right? Because if you thought that was not the case, you'd have many nafkamina. Namely, the same nafkamina. If you only had 3 tzitziot, the Tanakama would tell you 3 is meaningless. Rabbi Shmuel would say do 3. He said, and this proves conclusively that there is this implicit isser, meaning not just a positive to put on tzitzit. Because if there was only a positive, so then if you didn't have enough string for the 4th, there's no positive because I don't have the string. What do you want from my life? There's an implicit isser to wear a beged that's required to have tzitzit without tzitzit. The onus here, Rachmana Patre, mutar leilach ba'beged, bli tzitzit. Right? Because if you had thought that it's an onus, you would have thought that look, I don't have the string, it's mutter to go outside. Kamash Malon, no one holds that. And he proves it from later on in the Gemara to skip a line. I will beg and mechuyev b'tzitzit asher livot b'li tzitzit k'damash ma'acha v'had damrin and sadin b'tzitzit iku beinayu. And he says, then why did the Gemara give the nafkamina of kilayim? Hagam de v'lavachi asa isur. He said, it's true that if you wore 3 tzitzit, you violated an isur. Delovich beged b'shal shitziot. Avol b'isur dikilan dechamur plige. Says, you're right. The question isn't, did you do something wrong? Because everyone's going to agree you did something wrong. The reason the Gemara came up with the specific nafkamina it did is that that's the only way to test it. Right? And I think the Sfarim and the Griz fundamentally are like the Rashba. Right? But they sharpen the point and they say, by going through this careful analysis, what you realize is that the sugya is only coherent if there's an implied israseh, or lav, however you want to look at it, of wearing a beg without tzitzit. Because once you have that, as the Griz points out, you can never prove whether it's meaningless to put on 3 tzitzit, because everyone will agree you can't wear a beged with 3 tzitzit, either because it's totally meaningless or because you're making vatal mitzvah number 4. The only way to test it is by testing the corollaries, right? And that's what they point out. But what I think is yotze from this, and this is what we saw already before from the Haktava Kabbalah, right, is that no one really believes that these are, right, no one can really believe that these are 4 separate mitzvot in the way that, right, tefillin shel yad, tefillin shel rosh are 2 mitzvot, or, I don't know, right, whatever, pick your mitzvot, right, the way Shabbos and Yom Tov are different mitzvot, right? No one can do that because that doesn't make sense here, right? The Torah calls it 4. It's clear that at some level they are an integrated whole, right? The only question, it must be that everyone agrees that they are connected. The question is, are they meaningless, right? Or as we put it, is this like a building, right, with the apartments in it, where, yes, right, it's one integrated whole, but it's coherent to talk about components, right? And that's Rabbi Ishmael. Or it's like a circuit, all or nothing, right? If you don't complete the circuit, nothing will go through, and therefore it's meaningless. But everyone agrees that they're connected in a fundamental way, right? And that's why the nafkaminas have to be these specific ones and can't just be, right, are you yotze, or in shamayim what's happening, because that's not a nafkamina. Okay. Shkoyach, tomorrow...